The night crackled with a palpable tension at the old train station, as if the very air was charged with secrets waiting to be unleashed. I stood there, Julia, 25, my heart racing in anticipation, the cold biting at my skin while a fiery thrill coursed through me. Little did I know, as I awaited the last train, the universe had conspired to throw me into a whirlwind of passion. A chance encounter with a stranger would ignite a desire so intense, it would blur the lines between danger and ecstasy, desire and passion. "Waiting for the last train?" he asked, his voice smooth, with just a hint of mischief. "Something like that," I replied, trying not to let my voice betray the flutter in my chest. "And you? You don't look like someone who waits for anything." His laugh was low, easy. "Touché. But sometimes the wait is worth it." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning, and I found myself smiling despite the sharp cold. We started talking about everything and nothing. His words flowed like a melody, drawing me closer without him taking a single step. "You always this mysterious?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Only when I meet someone worth the intrigue," he countered, his gaze locking with mine. There it was, that pull, that quiet magnetism. The conversation danced between us, laced with teases and challenges, each word sharpening the tension. He leaned in slightly, his presence enveloping me, his warmth cutting through the chill. I felt like a moth circling a flame, knowing the danger yet unable to resist. The train's whistle echoed faintly in the distance, but I barely noticed. His eyes were on me, and the world seemed to shrink until it was just us. "Do you always wait for the last train?" I asked, a hint of sarcasm in my tone. "Only when the company makes it worth the risk," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to press, to push against whatever walls he had carefully built, but I stopped myself. Instead, I let the silence linger, charged and unspoken. He was hiding something, I could feel it, but I wasn't sure I cared. Not yet. The station felt like another world, the flickering lights casting shadows that seemed to move with us, wrapping us in their rhythm. Mark and I stood close, the space between us charged, every glance and every shift of his body pulling me in. His hand grazed my arm, slow and deliberate, sending a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. "You're quiet," he murmured, his voice like a caress. "Not much to say," I replied, though my pulse betrayed me, quick and frantic. I was trying to keep my composure, but the way he looked at me, intense, hungry, made it impossible. He stepped closer, his breath warm against my ear. "Then don't say anything." The words hung in the air for only a second before his lips met mine, claiming me with an urgency that left me dizzy. There was nothing tentative about the way he kissed me. It was deep, demanding, and raw, as if he'd been holding back and couldn't anymore. His hand slid to my waist, pulling me against him, and I let myself melt into his touch, my fingers tangling in his hair. I pressed closer, wanting more, needing more. His lips traveled from mine to the curve of my neck, his teeth grazing my skin just enough to make my breath hitch. The heat between us was overwhelming, drowning out every sound but the soft gasp that escaped me as his hands roamed, exploring, claiming. The cold platform was forgotten, all I felt was him. His touch was confident and deliberate, like he already knew every inch of me. My fingers trailed down his chest, feeling the tautness of muscle beneath his shirt, and I couldn't stop myself from pulling him closer, my body arching into his. He responded with a low growl, his hands tightening on me as if he couldn't get enough. The world outside disappeared completely, leaving only the warmth of his body and the fire burning between us. I didn't care about anything else, Not the station, not the train, not the clock ticking somewhere in the distance. All that mattered was the way his lips moved against mine, the way his body pressed into me, igniting something I hadn't felt in so long. "Julia," he whispered against my skin, his voice low and rough, filled with a need that matched my own. I didn't answer, pulling him back to me, my hands sliding under his jacket, desperate to feel more of him. The air between us was heavy, the tension shifting from passion to something deeper. Mark's fingers lingered on my arm, his grip just firm enough to hold me there, but gentle enough to remind me that I could walk away. I didn't want to. Not now, not after everything we'd shared in such a short time. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice low and hesitant. His blue eyes searched mine, the vulnerability in them stark against the confidence he exuded before. "I'm not who you think I am." I tilted my head, my heart pounding. "What do you mean?" He stepped back slightly, creating just enough space to let the words come out. "My past, it's not clean. I've made mistakes, big ones. I'm not running from anyone, not exactly, but I've left behind a life that would make most people think twice about being near me." His jaw tightened, and he looked away. I needed to start over. That's why I'm here. The honesty in his voice hit me like a wave. He wasn't asking for forgiveness or pity, he was laying himself bare, trusting me with the pieces of himself he probably hadn't shown anyone in a long time. I reached out, my fingers brushing against his. "We all have things we're not proud of, Mark. But that doesn't mean you don't deserve this. Us." My voice wavered, but I meant every word. "I'm here now, and I'm not running." His eyes snapped back to mine, and I could see the tension ease from his frame. A quiet smile ghosted across his lips, gratitude mixed with disbelief. "You don't know how much that means," he murmured. I didn't let him say more. Instead, I pulled him back to me, my lips finding his with a fervor that left no room for doubts or regrets. This kiss was different, deeper, more deliberate, like a vow passed silently between us. His hands cupped my face, his touch warm and steady, grounding me even as everything else spun out of control. "Julia," he whispered against my lips, his voice rough with emotion. "You're something else." "Show me," I whispered back, my breath hitching as his hands slid down to my waist, pulling me flush against him. The world outside faded, the soft hum of the train and the city lights blurring into nothingness. All I could feel was him, his lips, his touch, his heartbeat pounding in time with mine. We didn't care about the empty car or the risk of someone noticing. In that moment, nothing mattered except the heat building between us. His kisses trailed down my neck, leaving a path of fire that made me shiver. My hands roamed across his chest, feeling the hard lines of his body through the fabric of his shirt, and he responded with a low groan that sent a thrill coursing through me. Every touch, every whisper, every kiss felt like a declaration, a promise that we would face whatever came next together. The past didn't matter, and the future could wait. Right now, all that existed was us, wrapped in a cocoon of desire and trust, hurtling through the night toward whatever destiny awaited us.